Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions Info. I'm so glad you could join us this week. We have another great show for you. We are live out of Boca Raton, Florida, and this program is for the family caregiver. If you have someone in your family, maybe a loved one you're taking care of that has dementia, memory loss, this show was designed just for you to provide an extra resource to you as a family caregiver to help make your day a little bit better, maybe a little bit easier, talk about those challenging behaviors because we know caregiving is not easy. Matter of fact, it's very, very difficult. And a lot of times caregivers can't take the time to sit down and read a book. Sometimes they can't get out of the house to go to support group meetings. Sometimes they can't go to educational seminars for one reason or another. So this way you can tune in local radio or on your device, whether it's your computer or your smartphone, and watch the show anywhere you are, anytime that you want to. And we are live, but we do have archive shows that you can watch and catch up. And so thank you for joining us today. If you have a question, if you have a suggestion or a topic that you would like us to discuss on Caregiver Solutions Info, I invite you to send me an email. That email address is delray@arden-courts.com. Again, delray@arden-courts.com. I've loved to hear from you. I've heard from many people and got some great comments and some feedback, and I'm glad that the show is helping many, many people, not only caregivers, but also professionals, because we do have professionals that we interview here on this program that are in many, many different fields related to caregiving, Alzheimer's, dementia, and we're giving educational information because there's a lot more to caregiving than just knowing about the disease. There's a lot more to learn about what's going to happen next, some of the legal issues that you'll have to deal with, and those types of things. But we also have real-life caregivers that we have on the program, too, so that you can see people that have walked in your shoe or walking in your shoes that can tell their story. Every person that is a caregiver and every person that is suffering with Alzheimer's disease has a different story. I don't think there's any two stories alike. However, they are very similar. And so one of the best ways that we can learn is by, joining in and watching and talking to people that know where they've been and where they're going, and it's very helpful. So I thank you again for being with us today. Today's topic is something that is sometimes confusing, and we're going to be taking away that confusion and talking about MCI. MCI is mild cognitive impairment. Now, a little bit about what MCI is. According to the National Alzheimer's Association, mild cognitive impairment causes a slight but noticeable and measurable decline in cognitive abilities, including memory and thinking skills. A person with MCI is at an increased risk of developing Alzheimer's disease or another dementia. So right there, it tells us that MCI is not the same thing as dementia. MCI is not the same thing as Alzheimer's disease. Basically, it's like a precursor. It's a precursor to developing some type of dementia. And that's the way it's described here. Noticeable memory loss doesn't always mean Alzheimer's disease. All adults can forget names. We all lose our keys at some point. We all have times when we walk into a room to get something, and when we get there, we can't remember what we're there for. I'm sure that you may have experienced that. If you haven't, you will. And this is normal forgetfulness. Normal forgetfulness. It's a normal process. It's usually the result of being very busy, very stressed out, very preoccupied, very distracted, and it's considered a normal part of aging. According to the Mayo Clinic, 12% of those over age 70 have MCI. And we already know the statistic that people that are age 85 or older, 50% have Alzheimer's disease. So you can see the difference in the comparison of MCI versus Alzheimer's or another related dementia. And so we're going to be exploring a little bit more about MCI, what we should watch out for, what it means to us, what we can do about it, and we're going to have a very interesting show. But I did want to explain before we get into our guest today something very interesting. And again, this comes from the National Alzheimer's Association. It says here that mild cognitive impairment causes cognitive changes that are serious enough to be noticed by individuals experiencing them or to other people, but the changes are not severe enough to interfere with daily life or independent function. So you can see here we're talking about mild, that's why it's called mild, cognitive, how our brain is working, and impairment because it does impair certain parts of our daily life, but not to the point that we can't function or someone with MCI can't function. They can still do a lot of things, but they're starting to forget. It's the very, very beginning of this memory loss and forgetfulness that's getting a little bit worse. It's significantly noticeable, but if someone had MCI and you didn't know that person and you did not know that they had MCI, you probably wouldn't figure it out. It's very quiet sometimes in someone's life. People that have MCI, a lot of times, most of the time, are probably aware of it, and so they're very good at hiding it. They don't want to, tell people about it because they understand that they might embarrass themselves. They might not understand something. They might not be able to answer a question. And so people that have MCI are very, very much so high functioning, as we call it, and yet it's still not a dementia. The article goes on to say those with MCI have an increased risk of eventually developing Alzheimer's or another type of dementia. However, and I think this is important to know too, not all people with MCI get worse, and some eventually can even get better. And that's another big distinction between MCI and true Alzheimer's disease, for instance, because if someone's diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, which is a form of dementia, they're not going to get better. We know it's going to get worse. We know it's a progressive disease. And so we want to make this distinction between MCI and dementia because they're not the same. And we want to deal with it differently. We want to treat it differently. We want to look at the behaviors that go with it a little bit more. We know that there's two different kinds of MCI. Now, this is very interesting because the experts classify mild cognitive impairment based on the thinking skills that are affected. So in other words, there's thinking skills that are affected in two different categories, and they have classified them in two categories. One is known as amnestic or amnestic, and the other is known as non-amnestic. Now, that word comes from the word amnesia, and it's a Greek word that means forgetfulness, losing the memory as far as forgetfulness. So that's where they come up with the actual term. Now, the classification for amnestic MCI, this is kind of scary because it says that people are 3 to 4 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's than someone without MCI. So if you take that, statistic and look at it, you can see that there is a great possibility that someone with this type of MCI will go on to develop Alzheimer's disease. There's another classification known as non-amnestic, and it says here that thinking skills that may be affected by this type of MCI include the ability to make sound decisions, judge the time or sequence of steps needed to complete a very complex task, or have visual perception problems. All right, so there's a distinction now. The earlier one, the one that they're calling the amnestic MCI, this is a person that starts to forget important information that he or she would maybe have previously recalled easily, like a doctor's appointment or a conversation they had with their neighbor or one of their children, or even a recent event that they participated in. So there is a distinction. The latter one, the one with non-amnestic MCI, this form of MCI is often linked with non-Alzheimer's dementia. Now, what's a non-Alzheimer's dementia? A non-Alzheimer's dementia is another type of dementia. It could be frontotemporal lobe dementia, or it could be vascular dementia or Lewy body type dementia. So there is a big distinction, and that's why if you're noticing some mild cognitive impairment, it's important to actually go to the doctor and get this checked out, because the earlier that you find out what's going on, the better you'll be able to handle what's coming down the line and decide, is it an MCI? Is this going to lead to a Alzheimer's type dementia? Is it something else that we have to worry about? So those are the basic differences, and I think it's important for us to understand this. There are several causes for MCI, and they range from something as simple as a vascular condition caused by maybe a stroke to the brain, and that would be a vascular type dementia. There's another type that is neurodegenerative disease, and that's the kind that could lead to become Alzheimer's. There's a condition from a psychiatric point of view, such as depression, that could possibly cause MCI, and I've seen this many times, over the years. And the last one that they mention as a cause could be a brain injury or an injury to the head, such as a brain trauma. So these are some of the causes that could lead to the beginning of MCI. But remember, not everyone with MCI goes on to develop dementia. And so it's very important to figure out what it is, what you're dealing with. Important, too, is the fact that the risk factors that strongly are associated and linked with MCI are the same as those for dementia, advancing age, family history of Alzheimer's or other dementia, and conditions that raise the risk for cardiovascular disease. So previously on the program, we've talked about the risks for Alzheimer's disease, and the biggest risk is aging, and that's your biggest one. But there are a lot of other factors. They don't know exactly what causes Alzheimer's disease, and hopefully they'll figure it out one day with all the research that's going on. They don't really know, but these are some of the theories, and anything that we can do to learn about what the risks are, we can start to backpedal and try to reduce those risks if we're participating in any of those things. So this is what we're talking about, MCI versus a true dementia, and they're different. So when we come back from our first commercial break, we're going to be talking to someone, and we're going to be talking to someone who works with people with MCI and how they get them engaged and how they can help them. And so you don't want to miss this, so we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. Make First Choice your first choice for home health care. First Choice is state certified for Medicare-covered services such as medical treatment and rehabilitation. Qualified healthcare professionals come to your home and work closely with your doctor to build a care plan designed to get you back on your feet as soon as possible. Founded and operated by registered nurses, First Choice Home Health is dedicated to providing exceptional home health care. Their highly skilled medical professionals have the knowledge and ability to provide patients quality care. Call First Choice Home Health at 561-296-2770. That's 561-296-2770. And tell them you want them as your first choice. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Hi, and we're back talking about MCI, mild cognitive impairment, and how and why that is different from dementia. And here with me today, I'm very happy to welcome Andrea Brennan, who's the Chief Executive Officer of I Matter Day Center. Welcome, Andrea.
Hello, Miss Marcia Teele. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here because I've known you for quite a while, and I know that you are a very big advocate for helping caregivers. I know that you've been in the field for a long time as a healthcare professional, helping people, and you're passionate as I am about it. So we're going to have a great talk today.
I think so too.
Okay, great. So what I wanted to share before we get started talking to you specifically about what this adult day center is, I wanted to go right into treatment and outcomes of what the Alzheimer's Association says about mild cognitive impairment. Because we're talking about mild cognitive impairment, say that 3 times fast, and we want to really delve into it and know more about it so that we can talk about how it presents itself in people, what we can do to help them. And so if we're looking at treatment, this is very interesting because it says, according to the Alzheimer's Association website, that no medications are currently approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to treat mild cognitive impairment. Now, you as a caregiver out there may know that there are medications on the market to treat Alzheimer's disease. You've got your Aricept, your Namenda, and a couple others, but those aren't specifically for mild cognitive impairment. So they're making that distinction again right here. And drugs approved to treat the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease have not shown thus far any lasting benefit in delaying or preventing progression of MCI to dementia. So remember, sometimes it'll go there and sometimes it won't, But the drugs for Alzheimer's is not recommended for MCI because they're showing that there's no improvement by people taking these drugs to prevent the MCI going into a dementia. It also says that there are certain strategies that are helpful for those with MCI, and the studies suggest that these strategies that we're going to be talking about help slow the decline in the thinking skills. So in other words, certain things are going to improve thinking skills. More research is needed, of course, and that's why we want to always support research. A lot of trial studies, that's what's going on all over the country, trying to figure out what's going on, why people are getting dementia, what's something that we can all do to prevent it. But until that happens, until there's a magic pill, then we're dealing with this all over the world. And some of the strategies that are going to help us include exercise on a regular basis. The exercise on a regular basis is going to get your heart and pumping, which is going to pump more oxygen to your blood vessels. And the blood vessels include the ones going to your brain. And we know that the more oxygen we get to the brain, the better off our brain can function. So that's something everybody should be doing. And yes, some people do it for fun. Others do it for exercise because it makes them feel good and they get the endorphins. Other people exercise because they want to lose weight. But we should all be exercising to protect our brain, number one. Number two, it says control the cardiovascular risk factors to protect your heart and blood vessels, including those that support brain function. And how are we going to do that? How are we going to protect the cardiovascular part of our bodies? Well, that means eating better. That means not eating the high cholesterol foods. That means doing things that are under our control. Some things are out of our control, but what we feed our bodies, what we put into our bodies is really under our control. It's not always easy, but you want to include those really good fruits and vegetables and things that have antioxidants in them to feed the cardiovascular system. Things that are good for your heart are known to be good for your brain. And lastly, another strategy that we want to incorporate is participating in mentally stimulating and socially engaging activities which help maintain brain function. That means stimulating your brain. We've talked about that on the show before. Learning new things, participating in social activities. Don't be a couch potato. Don't sit in front of the TV all the time. Get up, get moving, get thinking, get doing. Just go and do. And this is going to help you. So even if you have adult children that you're worried about because maybe Alzheimer's disease runs in your family, they need to be doing all of these things now to help them keep their brain healthier. So now I have Andrea with me, and we're going to be talking about the social engaging part and the stimulating activities that help people not only with MCI, but also with dementia. So let's get into this right away, because you have an adult center, and tell me what kind of things that you do in your adult center.
Okay, so at I Matter, of course, our theme or tagline is that we make aging fun. Now, most people would say, that sounds like an oxymoron. Aging is not fun. But when you're able to take a group of people that feel as though they've either been forgotten or maybe they've aged, so they're not able to do the same things that they were doing, 5 months ago or 5 years ago. So in our facility, it is more about empowering them to do things that they're able to do. So some of the activities that we provide is silver sneakers, and that goes along with what you were saying as far as keeping moving and moving. In our case, we have a silver sneaker Silver Sneakers program.
You can say that one 3 times
Yeah,
fast,
3
too.
times, right? Silver Sneakers. We have that 3 times a week. And the session is about 45 minutes. It's actually paid for via Medicare. So if you have Medicare, that's what covers it.
What do you do for people that don't know what Silver Sneakers is? What is it?
It's actually an exercise program, and it can be done in both the chairs. You can either do it standing up or in the chairs. So regardless of what your physical limitations are, it provides or it cultivates a space where someone can continue to be as mobile as possible. So our clients will do anything from Silver Sneakers to paint therapy to art therapy. We have entertainers in our place. We have trivia. We do lots of stimulating projects and programs so that we can really bring fulfillment to who they are.
So they can do it in the chair. They can walk around. I had a lady several years ago. This program's been around, for a little while.
Yes.
And the lady says, I have a problem. And I said, what's that? She goes, I can't find any silver sneakers. And I said, oh, well, I know where they do it. She goes, no, I don't mean where they do it. I mean, I need silver sneakers. I said, I don't think you actually need silver colored sneakers to participate in the program, you know.
Right.
And that's what I'm like, but if you find them, go for it. You'll be the best looking one there,
Exactly.
Move those silver sneakers.
Exactly. Tell her to call us. We'll get a pair.
Actually, I have to tell you, I have a pair of Keds and they're silver sneakers.
No, that's cute.
So, I'm all prepared when I become part of your program down the line.
Right.
And
hopefully no time soon.
yeah,
but
I've got my silver sneakers and I am ready.
Good.
So, okay, so you get them moving, you do
Yes.
exercises.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
What other kinds of things do you do?
We also have music therapy in our space because obviously I'm sure you've heard this a million times and you've seen it in art and courts especially, where someone that is nonverbal or a little bit more withdrawn can hear music from their past or a genre of music that they absolutely loved, and it just you might see them with the foot tapping.
Yep.
And some of them sing the lyrics as if they wrote the lyrics.
They know those words.
Absolutely. And I call some of our clients Frank Sinatra's because they're just that great at, being able to recall the lyrics, and you can see the joy that it brings to them. So music therapy and just music in general plays a huge part in our space.
Yes. What's interesting, and I'm sure you've seen this too, when someone forgets a lot, music brings back the memories to them.
Absolutely.
Of a day that they can remember because they live in the past many times.
Absolutely.
But sometimes people totally quit speaking. And when they do hear that music, even though a person doesn't speak in a conversational way, they'll start singing those words. And it's amazing to see. And I've seen it happen where someone who you never hear talk, but yet in a program with music, they sing the words and they have a beautiful voice. And a husband that I know witnessed this with his wife, and he hadn't heard her speak in a long time. And when he heard her singing, he had tears streaming down his face because that music touched her. It touched her heart. It touched her soul. And it touched her brain because she was able to get those words out.
Absolutely.
And I think it's awesome. I get goosebumps.
It is.
When
I have them too.
Yeah. I
call it magic just because it's such... it's just amazing. It's a phenomenon to be able to watch. I've seen, fortunately in my experience, working with hospice, I've seen clients that were, at the very last stages of their lives. And, I've seen someone sing a song or turn a song on, and what it did for them was amazing.
Yeah.
That's a phenomenon.
It
so
is.
we like to be able to bring that into iMatter, and to see our clients dancing, to see them moving, playing instruments to songs that they have loved for years. That's what makes us pretty special.
Yeah, that's great. We know that music is good for them. We know moving is good for them. But then you get into some other types of activities too. So tell us a little bit more about the other activities that you use to stimulate their brain.
Absolutely. So we like to be a little competitive, which is okay, because of the fact that we have so many clients that are still very aware. Some of them, were doctors, some were attorneys, some were on, the stock market. They still have that competitive nature in them. So we actually do trivia activities all throughout the week that are ones that don't set them up for failure, so we don't back them into a corner. And we do that in a way that when we're creating the teams, we have someone that is leading each time, and then we give them options. So we'll say, which artist did this, and this, and then we would say it's either Billie Holiday or Billy Joel, and they'll say it's Billie Holiday. And so it promotes a space for them to be able to think,
right?
But at the same time, we're not setting them up for failure.
That's right. That's great.
Absolutely.
And what's really interesting is all the commonalities between an adult center such as yours and Art and Courts, because Art and Courts provides the same type of stimulating activities that we talked about, the musical programs, the dancing, the moving, all of the programs that we're talking about. They're similar at Art and Courts, which is a memory care community that you have in a program. However, what I really want to get to, and we're going to make you wait until our next commercial break, but what I really want to get into is why someone would go to an adult day center,
Yes.
as opposed to maybe going straight in to a community, because there's some differences of cognitive functioning.
Absolutely.
And the biggest one is what we're talking about right now is mild cognitive impairment. So we're going to relate to that as soon as we come back from our commercial break. So stay tuned.
Do you need the advice of an elder law attorney, but perhaps find it difficult or overwhelming getting to appointments? The solution is the Elder Law Department. They bring elder law to you by meeting with you in the comfort of your own surroundings to discuss your personal situation and family needs. In practice since 1994, Heidi Friedman is a member of the Elder Law section of the Florida Bar. She and her team help families with issues that include incapacity and estate planning, asset preservation, veterans benefits, and other legal issues that seniors may face. Call the Elder Law Department at 954-383-1143. 954-383-1143. They bring elder law to you. Make First Choice your first choice for home health care. First Choice is state certified for Medicare covered services such as medical treatment and rehabilitation. Qualified healthcare professionals come to your home and work closely with your doctor to build a care plan designed to get you back on your feet as soon as possible. Founded and operated by registered nurses, First Choice Home Health is dedicated to providing exceptional home health care. Their highly skilled medical professionals have the knowledge and ability to provide patients quality care. Call First Choice Home Health at 561-296-2770. That's 561-296-2770. And tell them you want them as your first choice. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
I'd like to thank our local sponsors and also our national sponsor, Art and Courts Memory Care Community, for helping to make this program possible. Art and Courts has communities located all across the United States. There's over 50 of them. Hopefully there's one near you, and you can call them to find out more about what Art and Courts provides for not only the person with memory loss, but also for the caregiver. One of the things Art and Courts likes to do is to educate caregivers, because they believe that education is paramount in learning how to deal with some of the very big challenges that you'll face as a caregiver. And because of that, Art and Courts would love to offer you this free book. It's called The 36-Hour Day. It's written by Dr. Peter Mace and Ravens, and Nancy Mace. And this book is considered the go-to book for many, many years. Matter of fact, it's in its 5th edition, and it's as strong as ever. This book is a family guide to learning about caregiving, Alzheimer's, and other related dementia. And Arden Courts would love to send you this book just for the asking. And all you have to do is call their toll-free number, which is 888-478-2410, and tell them that you heard about this free offer on the Caregiver Solutions Info program. And they'll take your name and address and make sure that they ship a book out to you right away. So give them a call at 888-478-2410 and tell them you'd like to have the 36-hour day book in your own library. So I'm back here with Andrea Brennan. Andrea owns a adult day center called I Matter. I love that name, by the way, Andrea, because, everybody matters. And I know that you specialize in providing a unique environment for people with not only MCI, but some other mild dementia. And you are stating that they matter. They're there, but I matter. So I really like, your philosophy there, and you've put it in your name. So we're talking about stimulating activities, engaging social activities as a way to treat, and I use that word loosely, how to treat MCI, mild cognitive impairment, before it gets to the stage of dementia. It may or may not, but it can. And so there's a distinction between an adult day center and maybe another type of center that's called an adult day care center, and another center that's called a senior center. Right? And sometimes I think that can be confusing for people.
Yes.
When they don't know the difference, or what kind of services, or which one is more appropriate for maybe their loved one to go that they should check out. So can you start with senior center?
Correct.
And then go through and explain briefly the difference between senior center, adult day center, and adult day care center, and what makes the difference? I'll let you explain that.
Of course. So a senior center typically is for someone that is mobile, is still very independent. They would be deemed as cognitively sound, and they're capable of managing their day-to-day activities on their own without much supervision.
And some of them can even drive themselves to this type of center.
Yes,
although
that's correct.
Some maybe can't for whatever reason, maybe a physical impairment, and they can take public transportation. But basically you're saying it's a senior center for them to go have fun, meet other seniors.
Yes.
But
more socialization versus anything else.
Yes.
And just to keep them busy. So that would be the best and the quickest way to define that particular sector of things. An adult daycare center can be equivalent to what we're doing at I Matter, in the sense of it being for those who need a little bit more oversight. The only reason why we have taken daycare out of the world of adult day centers is because of the fact that we are working with so many adults who are not only younger, but still very aware.
And they have the MCI.
Correct. So, if you're taking, let's say, for an example, a attorney or an OBGYN who may have just recently gotten diagnosed, and you say to him, I'm going to put you in daycare, they're going to probably look at you and say, absolutely not.
Right.
And so in our case, we take daycare out so that we're not minimizing who they are as adults and as people. And we just focus on I Matter. And it just depends on the approach and the philosophy of the building. Neither are, let's say one is not greater than the other. They both just cater to a different population. An adult daycare center generally has those that are a little bit more advanced in Alzheimer's dementia.
Right.
So they're not even really in that realm of being at MCI anymore.
Right, because in a adult day center for someone who has really been diagnosed with a dementia, such as Alzheimer's, they really need a lot more supervision. They need the oversight, they need the cueing, and they need the safety factor so they don't wander off the property.
That is absolutely right.
With MCI, you can manage that better. I know you do have a nice, secure facility, but with MCI, you're able to still reason with people, and they're not going to just wander off aimlessly because they still have the ability to understand where they're at and what they're doing. And you don't have to worry so much about them taking off as you would in as a daycare center, that they really need to keep the doors locked and keep people from wandering out. So that's the difference. And when you're looking at where to go, if you're an adult child and you have parents that are older, they may be going to a senior center and they be taking themselves there and participating and playing cards and socializing. It's a great place to go.
It is.
As things start changing, or if you're a spouse and you start seeing changes in your spouse where they're forgetting things and they're getting that mild cognitive impairment, you can still go to a day center to a point, but then you may want to go to one that actually caters to MCI to give them a little bit better self-esteem, a little bit more I don't know. I want to say compassion for what's going on, because unfortunately, seniors aren't always the kindest to each other when their peers start changing and their peers start losing memory and their peers start repeating things. And it's annoying to other seniors when they're trying to play a card game and you don't know what hand to play,
and they're losing
and they're losing and someone's messing up, and it gets they will start to ostracize some of the other seniors, and so that's a big red flag that maybe this is not now the most appropriate place for them. So you want to go to another one that caters to MCI, and then as things even progress more from there, I'm sure some of your clients age in place. So if they get the dementia, you don't kick them out.
Correct. What we try to do is, we're very hands-on with them as far as the staff is concerned, as far as engaging with them activities. We actually have care plans on each one of our clients, and some of them are volunteers. I have to tell you about that later. But needless to say, that gives us the opportunity to kind of look at where they are.
Yes.
A month, where they were last month to where they are now.
And that's very important, because actually, I'm glad you brought that up. I just want to go ahead and say this since we're talking about it. Under treatment and outcomes, from the information from the American Alzheimer's Association, it does say that experts recommend that a person diagnosed with MCI be reevaluated every 6 months to determine if symptoms are either staying the same, improving, which they can do with the proper strategies that we're talking about, or if it's growing worse. And you just said that because you're evaluating them and you're looking at their progress or decline, and you're documenting this.
Yes, that's correct.
And so, having a professional in the field that knows what to look for, and you have staff there that are wonderful. I know, I've been there.
Thank you.
But you have staff that knows what to look at and what to watch out for, and you're actually doing your service plan based upon the treatment, meaning the stimulation and the socialization that you're actually providing to them, and charting the outcomes and charting the increase or decrease in their abilities.
Yes.
And that's important. It's important to know where you're going.
It is. And of course, it's, unfortunately, I don't like to say daycare, but the best way that I can attribute this to, or a better example would be, is like when you have children. Unfortunately, in this disease, we have spouses that become parents to their spouses. We have adult children that become parents to their parents. And so we owe it to them to report things that we see that are important, big changes, milestones, things that they have to report back to the doctor. So ultimately, we are the eyes and ears for them.
That's right. And it's important because otherwise they're going to be probably either in a crisis situation or they're
Right.
going to be like, blown away when something happens and they're not going to have a clue because they didn't see it or they weren't trained to see it. And so
Correct.
you're trained to see that. And I think that's very important. So there are some signs of MCI. And these are 5 signs of mild cognitive impairment that someone might want to watch out for. And I want to go through these quickly and then ask you, how do you see this in your center, and if you do, and how you deal with some of these issues? So some of the signs are a person begins forgetting appointments or other scheduled events. So again, they're going to forget doctor's appointments. Maybe they have a weekly card game that they've on the books, on the calendar, for years, and all of a sudden they've forgotten their weekly card game. That's a sign. Another sign is people repeat questions or repeat stories. That's a sign. Also, a person may ask more questions about handling their personal finances or other business affairs. When you're getting into balancing your checkbook, paying the bills, they may start asking these questions, and hopefully they will ask because some people are too proud to ask and they can really make a mess of that. Another sign is they forget to take their medication. Sometimes adults forget that because, again, they get stressed out, they get busy, they get distracted, and it's like, oh, I forgot my medicine. And that sometimes happens, but again, it's a sign to watch for. And a lot of times people are less interested in something that they always love to do, especially cooking. I think if a woman, if a wife, a mother loved to cook and she always cooked for her family, and all of a sudden she's not interested in it anymore, it's not that she's not interested, but that's the way she's behaving because it can become too overwhelming and too complicated for them.
Correct.
Because, again, remember, some of that behaviors, we talked about things that they can't do, the thinking skills, executing things, knowing what sequence things are happening in, especially if you're cooking a large meal, Thanksgiving, and you don't know when to put the turkey in, when to put the green bean casserole, and when to mash the potatoes. I mean, it can be very complicated. And so someone with mild cognitive impairment would shy away from that because they can't get the sequencing right. So do you see some of these signs in some of your clients that come to your center?
Yes, we definitely do. There was only one particular sign that we haven't had as an issue just yet, but that is only because most of the caregivers are very hands-on in our building, whether it's an adult child or a spouse. But we have had to redirect our clients where it was a simple matter of my husband's supposed to come and get me in 5 minutes, and they'll ask that same question in another minute or another 30 seconds. So we do a lot of redirecting.
Yes.
We do have to tell small fibs every once in a while, like he just went to run some errands because of their inability to recall the time. So we'll have to do that every once in a while.
Those are those therapeutic fibs that they talk
Yes,
about.
the little
And
white
it's
lies.
Little white lies,
And it does take time. It's a lot of adult children or spouses have a hard time coming to terms with telling stories to their spouses. But as I've said to them, is it going to harm them?
Right.
Whether you're telling them the truth or not. So
Right.
what's in their best interest?
And you have to look at the outcome because sometimes the
Right.
truth
can really hurt things. And it's about the moment, how they
Yes.
feel in the moment.
Exactly. And so you see these, and then
me.
you're dealing with these because these are the signs, and these are actually red flags. So that if you or someone that you love are having any of these red flags popping up, it's meaning that you need to go ahead and get to a doctor and see what's going on, because there is a possibility it's the precursor to Alzheimer's or another dementia, or it could be more normal, but you want to see, is it normal forgetfulness? Is it MCI? Or are we leading down the road to Alzheimer's? we come back from our last commercial break, Andrea is going to be sharing some more important information about how to get your loved one to an adult center. We'll be right back.
Do you need the advice of an elder law attorney, but perhaps find it difficult or overwhelming getting to appointments? The solution is the Elder Law Department. They bring elder law to you by meeting with you in the comfort of your own surroundings to discuss your personal situation and family needs. In practice since 1994, Heidi Friedman is a member of the Elder Law section of the Florida Bar. She and her team help families with issues that include incapacity and estate planning, asset preservation, veterans benefits, and other legal issues that seniors may face. Call the Elder Law Department at 954-383-1143. 954-383-1143. They bring elder law to you. Arden Courts is not just a place to live. It's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
And we're back talking with Andrea Brennan with I Matter Adult Center, and we're talking about mild cognitive impairment. And so before the break, Andrea mentioned about volunteering, and I want to let her explain what she means by that. But before we get into that, I have to say that I think, my personal opinion is that people that are starting to forget and people that are at home and aren't getting enough stimulation, enough socialization, and they're at that very early stage, this mild cognitive impairment that we're talking about, they do very well by starting at a day center where they can engage with their peers. They can have fulfilling days with doing activities, the stimulation, the socialization. And I think that that start-off point is a great segue into assisted living for memory care, because a lot of caregivers are having a hard time at home dealing with trying to entertain somebody or just can't deal with the day-to-day, but they're not ready just yet to place, and maybe the person is considered too high functioning to place because they really don't have that full dementia yet, but they do have this MCI going on. And so it would be very beneficial to both the caregiver and the person with the MCI to go to a day center, and it gives them both a break from each other, and it promotes wellness for both of them.
It does.
So that being said, tell us, before we have to end our show in the next couple minutes, how somebody would get someone to go to a day center that has MCI, and maybe they're a professional, like you mentioned, a former doctor or lawyer, and they're very resistant to that. How could a caregiver help get someone there?
So what we actually do is we created a program where we have volunteers and we have clients. So our volunteers are generally those that are still very early in a diagnosis of dementia or mild cognitive impairment, and the spouses or the adult children really know that they are not safe at home anymore. So what I actually have done is I let them interview me. I will even call the family, or I'll call the volunteer, and I will let them know that, we have a brand new program in Boynton Beach, and, we really could use some help. And so most of the time it's about still feeling needed and still feeling like you are a purposeful person. So when we do that and we have them interview, they'll say, okay, I can do this. I can help with lunch, and I can help with music, and I like to play cards. And then we'll get them to volunteer that way. The application is the same, but the front says volunteer application. Hopefully no volunteers are listening. But needless to say, that's what we do. That's the way to make sure that they still feel like they're in control and we're not taking from them.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful.
Thank
and
you.
I tell spouses all the time, let them go volunteer, because they're going to feel like they have a purpose and they're contributing and they're not, being labeled,
Right.
with this. And I
Right.
think that's wonderful. So if someone's listening to our show today and they want to know more about adult day centers, they maybe like to contact you, ask you some more questions, how can they do that?
They can actually call our office, and our phone number is 561-777-7492. We also have a Facebook page, which is I Matter Adult Day Center. And I can always be reached via email. And the spelling of my name, which is Andrea, ANDRAYAB, at imatteradultdaycenter.com.
Well, thank you for coming to the show. I love talking with you.
Same here.
Andrea, you always have such a positive attitude, lots of energy.
Thank you,
And I
Marcia.
want to thank you all for watching today, too, and remind you, don't forget to call the toll-free number at Arden Courts to get your free 36-hour day book, 888-478-2410. And until next week, please remember, give someone a hug, because they need it, and so do you. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program